give your honest opinions on things, and be aware that it sometimes takes a while to work out what those are. When you're writing personal statements or answering interview questions, don't say what you think an Oxford tutor will want to hear. Say what you really think. When I was writing my personal statement, in my first draft, I said I liked a book because it was a proto-feminist text. When I went away and thought about it for a bit, I realised that I actually liked it because there was a Scottish character in it who sometimes really played up his Scottishness, and as a Northern Irish person I was like, oh my goodness, I understand exactly why he's doing that. So in my next draft of the personal statement, I said that I liked the book because of the strange relationship he had with his patriotism, and that's immediately far more unique to me and therefore far more interesting. Tutors want to see how your mind works.
For people applying to English, I would say read deeply rather than widely. So don't worry about having read something from every author in the canon or reading tons and tons and tons of really varied books. Just think very deeply about the books that you enjoy and get good at analysing what you like, because they just want to see your skills, like they want to see how you think about reading.
So when it comes specifically to the interview and preparing for it, I think it is really important to think of it as a genuine intellectual discussion and not as an interrogation. And what I mean by that is really paying attention to the questions that you're being asked, remaining sensitive to the direction the conversation is taking. And very importantly, if you need clarification over something, if there's anything you don't understand, just vocalizing that. Tutors are very good at rephrasing and explaining if that's what you need. And also if you need a moment or two to collect your thoughts, that's absolutely fine too. You can just say so. Nobody expects you to have the perfect answer right off the bat. They genuinely just want to see how you think.
I think that when students are writing their personal statements and thinking about applying to Oxford, they can often think that there are certain things that they should or shouldn't say, or certain topics that they should be interested or shouldn't be interested in, when actually that's not true. In many ways, my advice would just be to talk about what you're genuinely interested in, and don't try and worry about whether or not it fits into a certain idea of what you should be interested in or what you shouldn't, because ultimately you'll shine the best and the most at discussing something that you're truly passionate about. And that's what we want to see more than anything else. There's no one conception of what a good student is. That can look very different for different people. If I had to identify maybe two qualities that were common to all good students, it would be a sense of intellectual flexibility and a willingness to take on board feedback and respond to it and really take it seriously and kind of change their minds.
Someone who wants to apply to Oxford for E&M, I think focus on TSA to get your foot in the door, and then look into current affairs and economics to boost your interview prep.
So in economics and management, which is where I teach, students have to have maths at A levels or equivalent. And even beyond just that basic requirement, my finding is that students who are technically strong are able to make more of the subjects on offer. They basically have more resource at their disposal. And I would really say that if students can beef up and hone up on those skills prior to coming here, it just puts them in a really strong position when they're tackling the coursework. So mostly, I think we're looking for students who are sort of really dynamic and intellectually curious. In some ways, just really willing to give things a go. Because each tutorial deals with a specific topic, but obviously these topics are interlinked, and in my subject, economics and management, eventually we're trying to sort of develop one kind of holistic picture. And students who are willing to think outside the box really take a chance on what they're willing to contribute, what they're willing to write, in terms of building up that bigger picture, is often adds more value to the system.
So the first thing that I would say to someone who is thinking about applying for history is do not panic. I know that it can feel really overwhelming just how much there is to do in the admissions process for Oxford, but do not panic about it, honestly. The best thing to do is to take each step as it comes. So first things first, the personal statement, then your written work, then your history aptitude test, and then the interviews. If you take each step as it comes, it's a lot less stressful. So with your personal statement, try and make sure that the things that you're saying are expressing why you're interested and passionate about your subject. Don't just list books that you've read. Talk about how that shaped your interest and why it's made you want to study history. With your written work, I would say something that I didn't realise is make sure that you're really comfortable talking about whatever you send, whatever essay you send off, whatever that topic is, be really, really comfortable talking about it. Because for me personally, I know that my interview is more so based on my written work than my personal statement. With the history aptitude test, I would say practice, practice, practice. There are quite a few past papers on the Oxford website, and I would say practicing is something that you really, really should do, because a lot of the skills that they're looking for, you can only get good at doing if you've done if you've taken the time to go through it and do it repeatedly. With your interview, I would say just try and make sure that whatever you're thinking, say it out loud. No, nothing that you say is stupid, honestly. There are so many, they don't care, they don't think you're stupid, but it's just really helpful for them to steer you along the right course if they know what you're thinking. But yeah, most of all, just don't panic, it'll be fine, honestly.
The advice I'd give to someone who wants to apply to my course is, number one, make sure you're really passionate about the subject. So read around, read the news, read history books, listen to podcasts, just try and really immerse yourself and work out what your actual interests are in. And that would take me on to 2, make sure that you find the kind of things that really interest you and that really engage you, because this degree is absolutely fantastic, and the reason I love it is that you can pick and choose from so many different areas of study. But what that does mean is it's a great idea to come and show that you're already enthusiastic for the subjects that you might want to pick when you're here.
Well, in terms of preparing for an application for Oxford, there are some very obvious practical things that you can do. So, for instance, in my subject, there's an aptitude test. It's a bit daunting, but lots of those tests are available online with mark schemes. Another very practical thing is that we ask for samples of students' written work. And I suppose the advice I'd give you there is that it's important that you choose something that you're willing to talk about, because tutors are likely to ask you about that work in the course of the interview. The other thing I would say about preparation is reading beyond the school curriculum, developing an interest of your own. You can do that through wider reading. You can do it through engagement with online lectures. There's masses of material now available online. One of my favourite sites, for example, are the Gresham College lectures. Loads of public lectures on a whole range of disciplinary areas, which is going to encourage you to look at the world in different ways and develop your flexibility. That's what we're really looking for.
For prospective geographers, I would recommend just reading lots around your subject. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy lots of books and read and read and read. You can get lots of information on news articles, podcasts, all sorts. They're not expecting you to have read a whole library worth of books.
What I would emphasize with respect to any of the philosophy degrees that we offer at Keble is that there's no presupposition of background knowledge. There are no prerequisites. When we interview you, they're not going to be questions that are designed to figure out whether you already know stuff about philosophy. They're going to be questions that are designed to see what type of critical thinking skills you have, whether you're going to find the puzzling elements of philosophy interesting and invigorating, or whether you're going to find them frustrating, and what it's going to be like to work with you in thinking through these issues. But the thing you most want in a student in philosophy is the ability to be comfortable with uncertainty. Philosophy is not like other disciplines. You're not going to learn a bunch of facts and then have to repeat them. It's much more about the questions and the puzzles and the problems and figuring out what is so puzzling or difficult about them.
So people looking to apply for modern languages, I'd say the most important thing is to read. So if you're applying for a language that you haven't studied before, like beginner's Italian, for example, which I study, you can read a text and translation. If you're applying for a language which you have studied, like French, try and read an easy novel, maybe some poems in that language. And then in your personal statement, you can mention what you found interesting about those texts, what particularly grabbed you. Could you make any comparisons with anything else you've read? and just talk about them really. Don't just say I've read them, say like what you got from reading them, I think is what tutors are looking for the most.
I would say definitely don't be put off by your academic background, whether that's the school you're coming from or the subjects you've been studying at A-level. Modern languages is such a diverse subject that many A-level subjects, even that might seem completely unrelated, might well give you the right skill set for modern languages at Oxford.
My advice for potential applicants in modern languages or French would be to definitely immerse yourself as much as you can in the culture, whether that be by watching TV programmes in the target language, listening to radio shows in the language, or even just watching some TV in the language. I think as much as possible, develop your passion for the subject, and that will stand you in good stead when you're applying.
So at Open Days, I found that one of the questions people ask is what weight we attach to their GCSE grades, if they've done GCSEs. And I think it's important to say that, well, first of all, that in my subject, which is modern languages, most candidates have what we might describe as a very good run of GCSE grades. But there are nonetheless differences between the grades, and I don't think any candidates should be put off because they haven't got a completely perfect set of grades, because when we're weighing up candidates, we're looking at lots of other things than straightforward GCSE grades. But what really matters if you have time to do more on top of your schoolwork is to do something that will really develop your passion for the subject. Do something that you can make your own. Like, for instance, make a point every day of looking at a 10-minute YouTube video on French, how to speak French, on French words. There are piles of YouTube videos. Do that systematically every day for 10 minutes. You learn an awful lot. Another thing you might do that will help you to take ownership of the subject and become really interested is to get your hands on a French book, for instance. And it doesn't really matter what it is, any book at all. Just get your hands on it and read a page a day. Set a little time aside, read a page a day and look up on word reference online the words and phrases you don't know, write them down and go at it until you finish the book, and then you really have made that book your own.